organized labor has criticized the federal government for approving a 180 billion naira palliative package to states to cushion the impact of the fuel subsidy removal. The Nigerian Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress are insisting that the governors cannot be trusted. They say politicians and not the poor will benefit from the 5 billion naira given to each state government for disbursement to the citizens. Arise analyst Dr. Sam Amadi joins us now to have a look at this. Thank you, Dr. Sam Amadi, for coming to Newsnight. 11,500 vehicles for CNG. Make us understand how the government intends to put some structure and meaning to this.
Well, first, I think I was part of the first mission meetings with the third committee at the level of the Chief of Staff and NLC. The idea is here that you, with CNG conversion, you create a real choice. So people migrate to CNG because CNG is cheaper, far cheaper. CNG is even safer because it's lighter than petrol. And so with this, you create a choice. So without dealing with the subsidy removal of petrol, you create a process for people to migrate to a cheaper, safer. And then for perhaps buses, that's one. Two, Innocent has for some time been doing dual kind of CNG and petrol. So most of Innocent big lorries, buses run on CNG. About 6,000 has been converted in Benin. So the argument of Labour, actually Labour pushed the CNG. The argument of Labour is that, look, we don't want to be under the stranglehold of monopolists and extortionists in the petrol industry. Give us access to have gas, which is cheaper. We have gas that could last for 500 years, some estimate. We are almost more of a gas nation than a fuel or oil, country. So it makes sense economically. It makes sense in terms of social job creation. It makes sense in terms of, reducing cost of mobility. The snag here too is one, the infrastructure for conversion. How rapid can you deploy? So the regional plan government has is to deal with high density traffic or transport areas, Lagos, Port Harcourt, Kano, and Lagos, Port Harcourt, Kano, and Abuja. Now, that will not deal with the impact of this. Every state should have some measure. So the problem they're working on that. Then the number, it took countries like China, some other countries, Brazil, and other places where this has happened, between 2 to 3 years to get to about 1.5 million to 2 million. So the question is, can we roll out quick enough? But this is a good idea. PMAN says they have the infrastructure, they can roll, they can add on. The private sector can also crowdsource both financing, gas gathering, and of course trucking. All this can happen. So it looks like a good idea as alternative to petrol. Okay,
why I do not want to mention any brand, I mean, because you try to advertise for the brand earlier. The thing is, it's going to help with job creation, no doubt. But then that's if the government is willing to pump enough funds into the manufacturing sector such that we can begin to actually manufacture from here. So what do you make of the possibility of encouraging local manufacturing?
Well, basically, it's going to be mostly local manufacturing. The gas companies are local here.
No. I mean vehicles, because there's only one company I know that manufactures vehicles from Nigeria.
So, the point is, look, government has been strategic. By the way, there are CNG buses in the world outside Nigeria. So there are two options here. One is local content, which helps to create the economy, create jobs locally. But again, also the imperatives might mean that some might come from imported vehicles to deal with the short-term need for urgent rollout of buses. So part of NLC demand will be buses for workers across the country. And so government is looking at maybe, talking about how many thousands will you do? So the local manufacturer, whoever it is, may not have the capacity to manufacture the volume you want. So there could be a split, maybe 70, 80, 50, 30, 60, 40.
So you're talking about quota?
Quota. That's okay. Locally, we can, within these 6 months, we can get this number, or 3 months. But in the short term, we might have to import XY. By the way, the number of buses that will make an impact in terms of this conversion and also helping with mobility for workers and other people would be in the terms of maybe 2, 3 million, 4, 5, 7 to 10 million if you look at the vehicular traffic across the country. So I think that we need to prioritize local production. I also hear that a car manufacturer somewhere in Lagos, I don't know the name, I don't know what they can do. But first you have to sit back and say, what capacity can we have? You ramp it up. Give them incentive also to expand, to be quicker. Because look, part of industrial policy of this government should be to look at the auto industry as well have comparative advantage. If you look at the West African coast, we are the country in terms of manpower, technical capability that can produce as cheap.
Right.
If you look at countries in the world, the way economic growth is driven, according to the new institutionalist, is basically to look at where you can be comparable at produce by lowering costs. Because if we are a low wage country,
right,
we take that advantage and go into auto production, expand to West Africa. So using this conversion policy to further put a spur to local production of automobile would help to give Nigeria that comparison. So it would be like Korea. We start maybe mediocre, not too sophisticated, but good enough for the roads, for Ghana, Cameroon, Ivory Coast, you expand. So I think the local production should be the anchor of this conversion policy, and then you supplement with importation of vehicles.
Okay, away from that, let's look at the 5 billion naira the federal government is looking at to give each state of the federation to cope with the fuel subsidy removal impact. Is that not beginning to look like penny wise, pound foolish, and more so that the Labour is saying they cannot trust these state governors? I
think cash transfer remains an important component of mitigating the impact of the rate shock of price increase. But the problem is this. All over the world, the federal government uses transfers and grants to compare performance by state. So you don't just give them loan or give them grant. First, the mechanism for monitoring. For example, you could have designed a way that all the states will have to certify data. You can also create a third layer, civil society, monitor this disbursement. So the history of economic development shows that where federal government has used grant and aid with conditions that compel efficiency, openness, transparency for states, you get better result. So if you just do a windfall transfer, I mean, how will citizens of Jigawa, Imo State, for example, Kaduna State or whatever, be able to compel that 5 billion be used? How would they verify who accesses it? So Labour is very correct. It's not about whether the governors are criminals or not. It's simply that the federal government left it too open. They should have used these great incentives, demand some level of even state funding. 5 billion is too small. So they can say, we'll give you 5 billion. If you match with 2, we'll give you 7. We should learn how to use the government's capacity to use funding to generate behavioral change, to create incentive for productive actions and efficiency. It's immense. Stop giving people money for nothing. Give money, incentivize behavior, incentivize investment, incentivize transparency and accountability. So you can say we'll give 3. If you produce 1.5 billion, we'll give you 5. If you do XYZ, good practice, good governance framework, if you develop these things, and if you work in partnership with civil society or with labor to get list that is verifiable and standardized, we can up it this way.
Okay. Now, yeah. Let me button right there. So in this case, if the federal government now decides to still go ahead and give the 5 billion naira in grant or whatever loan, whatever it is, to states, how do we ensure that the money doesn't end up in the hands of the cronies of these governors?
We can't ensure because they didn't put intelligible criteria for access. So if they have designed it in a way to say, this is money available for state, but states step forward with their plan to be verified. Show us how you have data that captures the poor. Open it up for people to vet. So within a few days, you get the states. States will not. The point is, why would the state governor, who is going to get 5 billion, who is thinking about his re-election, like in Imo State or like Bayelsa or like Kogi, for example, of election, not even re-election, election, and in his money, why do you think he will generously see the idea of saying, oh, governors, our leaders are good-minded people, they'll do well for people? It's old school, it's dead and buried. You should govern as if you're dealing with criminals and create structures, institutions that compare performance. And when you're the one giving the money, you are at advantage to define outcomes you want and establish framework for those outcomes and commit people so they step up. They show you show me your card. They show you the plan, the step up they collect. Then you have a process of monitoring and evaluation. So these things that we give money, and that's why we're not getting good governance at the subnational level. You have to use money. Money is a powerful tool in economic change. You use it well, you change behavior. You use it, you even compound the problem. Windfall, moral hazard. The guy sit there, take this money, use it to sponsor, give his cronies, or even himself, or do other things that do not address the intended objective. So the federal government is the one rightly thinks we need to deal with poverty and the impact of this subsidy. But we go first with this support. That makes a lot of sense. But then the question is, how do you ensure that this support actually addresses? Have you done any assessment of impact? Who are the people impacted at the various states? And by the way, good argument. Why should you give Imo and Sokoto? Sokoto is the poorest country in the country. So if it's a poverty intervention, maybe they should have more. Again, who is going to be impacted by fuel subsidy removal? Of course, people in Lagos, people in Port Harcourt, people in Abuja, Major Kano would be probably more impacted because you have more people who are commuters. And then who impact on foodstuff? Who bears the product? These are things you should use, and they use the money in a manner to address the objective we want to achieve. So far, this looks like a windfall, and you go the way of other windfall, or you go off one subsidy repayment money. We've seen those things.
Looks like a windfall. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Sam Amadi, Arise analyst, for coming on Newsnight.